Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first quarterly report as the Trust Chain Working Group. Uh, I'm really excited to share with you our quarterly report from Q1 of 2026 and have three experts with me to be able to talk through some of the key observations that the Trust Chain Working Group has talked through in the last quarter, understanding the attacks that we're seeing, understanding what we need to do as defenders in order to be able to uh, protect ourselves and the interests of our organizations. And I'd love to just have everybody introduce themselves. I am Greg Crabb. I'm CISO in residence at Ballistic Ventures and very honored to host this first quarterly report. Cassie, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Cassie Crossley. I'm the former Vice President for Supply Chain Security at Schneider Electric and now CEO, co-founder of VolNow. And I'm author of the O'Reilly book, Software Supply Chain Security, Securing the End-to-End Supply Chain for Software, Firmware, and Hardware.
I'm always impressed with you wrote the book on this topic. So thank you for
Like,
joining us, Cassie. Sangram, can you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Gracie. You have a lot of examples now to talk about. So your V2 of the books will come out with bunch of these stories and this real issues we are dealing with. Sangram Das, CISO and VP of IT at Sysens, based out of Bay Area, and been with Sysens for 3 years. My background goes to various companies like PayPal, Square, Silicon Valley Bank. Right before this role, I was at CDK Global, which was a public company, went private. So glad to be here, and thank you for putting this together, Greg.
Yeah, and Sangram, thank you for being the chair of the Trust Chain Working Group. Uh, Sahil, thank you for joining us, and if you could introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be part of this panel. So yeah, with all you industry experts, it's happy to be part of this. So yeah, my name is Sahil Banushali. I lead the technology risk over here at Lucid Motors. It's been today would be my tomorrow. I'll be completing 1 year at Lucid. So yeah, so it's my anniversary at Lucid Motors. So before this, I worked at consulting KPMG and then worked for a brief at Visa in the cybersecurity practice. And yeah, I'm happy to be part of this panel and looking forward to it.
I think you are right there with us all from experience, and really look forward to your insights from your vantage point, Sahil. Thank you. We're going to hop right in. We're going to look at Q1 2026. What was the threat landscape that we were looking at from a third-party risk management perspective? We saw some real significant systemic acceleration when it comes to attacks against identity, attacks against SaaS infrastructure. We had some really important attacks against AI and ML, maybe even a fault on one of the major providers parts there. Supply chain attacks were, the central theme of all of this, and we even had some telecom interruptions. So that's what we talk about in the Trust Chain Working Group. Excited to continue the conversation with our colleagues here. And what we will do is cover, um, this perspective that we want to give is really how do we give you uh, valuable information? And Sangram, can you talk a little bit about what we're
Absolutely.
really trying to do here?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a group, we have been obviously reading, like many of you, trying to digest and trying to figure out how best we educate us and our world around us who are interested in software supply chain security. There are various elements to that, but we have a very simple objective. Can we provide some quick insight to our leaders who are managing these risks for the companies they work for, the organization they serve? This should serve as like a reference guide for CISOs and CIO, chief risk officers of the companies. By the way, we plan to share this deck in public domain. That could be very useful. for anybody who is listening to this and subsequently want to use some of this information in various conversations with the board or leadership and in the areas where they're trying to influence various investment decisions, how essentially how to secure this complex software supply chain. End of the day, we are trying to be resilient. Hacks are happening, attackers are there. There are various motives. Sometimes it is financially motivated. Sometimes it is the mistakes we do, honest mistakes we do. But end of the day, can we continue to be those resilient businesses, right? End of the day, we have to make sure that our customers are being served, and we are able to do that in a very smarter way. Our goal, help educate each other, share information, and obviously anybody who's listening to this are interested to be part of this conversation, please reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to be collaborating with you. That said, Greg, I think we have a lot of information to talk about, right? Let's go right in.
Outstanding. Thank you, Sangram. And obviously, Q1, we had and continue to have the Iranian conflict. I think the biggest damage that we've seen from a cyber domain perspective is obviously the Striker attack, uh, affecting a lot of folks in the healthcare industry. There's an identity system compromise. It's definitely something that we need to be thinking about from a critical infrastructure perspective, that we have an active adversary that is on the battlefield now trying to impact our critical infrastructure and services. You know, any thoughts on what we need to be considering in this space to to be vigilant, I think.
Yeah. Cassie, do you want to add something before I jump in?
No, no, go for it.
Well, so I think sometimes knowing, possibly we don't even know that with the products we create, our customers use some of our products, and they are part of the larger infrastructure of the and essentially we being part of the supply chain in a way need to be very careful what we deliver to our customer. And in this particular scenario, the motivation is very different, right? And we have already seen that identity seems to be the easiest link in a way they try to get in. And having a simple uh, detection program where we are able to scan and getting inbound leads in terms of stolen identities or lost identities, and ensuring those are quickly taken care is a huge thing to do. So there are many controls we look at. Obviously, we things we control. There are a lot of things we do not. But particularly with respect to identity, if there are platforms which is going to give you stolen credentials and some attribution with respect to that, let's be proactive. Let's get that information and trying to manage that in our infrastructure.
Yeah, Sahil, how as OT professionals should we be thinking about uh, controls, infrastructure, protection, resilience? Um, Love to get your perspective.
No, yeah. So as rightly said by Sangram, like the identity, even the operating technology or the ICS system, they still have their inbuilt. Sometimes people still in the industry use default credentials. So it's very important now. People are not just not think about IT, but think about the critical infrastructure of the governments, the manufacturing units. You need to secure those. Look at the vulnerability management of those systems because industry focuses on software's uh, vulnerabilities. Yes, is there. But even using the ICS system, the internal control systems, or even the OT, they have their own piece of software. People do not think about that, and the attackers are not waiting, hey, someone will take care of it. So they are really looking to those infrastructure and bringing it down, like attacking your water supply, your electric grids. That's building down the entire infrastructure of the country. So people, companies should think, and with this iron attack, it's even more evident even in the regular supply chain. Forget about the software, even the regular supply chain building things, there is so much of things going on, and securing them is very key. So it's just not that, but looking at the holistic thing. especially identity, is very key even in the operational world.
Yeah, I think all of those are really good points, Sahil. And definitely something that we need to be vigilant on. I want to turn the focus to all of these software supply chain events that we've seen. I mean, it's like the technique du jour these days. Uh, and I know, Cassie, you're very passionate about many of these. This one, you lit
Yes.
up on. What are you seeing, relative to this particular attack and this family of issues?
Yeah, there's many different kinds of software supply chain attacks, and this one is one that I've cautioned folks about, and I have been telling people keep updated on your libraries. Make sure that you're at the latest level so that you don't have vulnerabilities and things that have been fixed. And then it's sad that that's what they did, and those folks that were using those latest libraries were the ones that were compromised in various different attacks over the Q1. And so I implore people do the right thing, but you also have to be aware what's happening in the ecosystem of your software supply chain on your dependencies, whether it be your open source dependencies or even commercial dependencies, and we'll talk more about that.
Wow. So this is the one where people got punished, leaders got punished, or companies got punished for doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it begs a question. On the slide deck, we put as a strategic mitigation to age releases, so that what do you think about that? Do you think that's a proper mitigation, or do you think that that's not proper, right? I mean,
Right.
yeah, what's your
It's
thought on that, Cassie? I might have been
it's
wrong in
tough.
putting that as a
No,
strategic
no, it's
mitigation.
I was recommending people to look at N minus one and really aging some of those releases. But then you have platforms where you can't afford that because the moment the CVE is registered, people are looking for the exploit window and they're developing exploits against it. So it's really a cautionary tale is to be able to move backwards if you need to quickly. But in this case, it was just a massive ripple effect in that area.
Yeah, it just harkens back to me, in account takeover fraud. You always have to be uh, vigilant over new account creation. And, are we at a point now? Do we need to be vigilant over new open source library updates? And, I just, it's fascinating to me. Uh, you know, all right, here we have a Chinese nation state threat actor hitting a supply chain attack. Again, what do we think here? This is interesting.
Yeah, I was mentioning earlier to you all that I was writing my book years ago and I could not get a use case, an example, and a case study for a distribution attack. I knew it was an area where the supply chain could be compromised. And unfortunately, now I have example to use on this piece. And that's something that, the handoff, especially as developers, we go through and we say, okay, somebody take over this. And a lot of times, especially CISOs, you don't have that the movement of deployment to those different platforms. That's usually a go-to-market event or some other areas. So I find it very interesting, and we see this even Sahil, I'm sure seen it. You've got so many different methods to be able to intake product across a large physical infrastructure that this distribution model worries me quite a bit. We don't even talk too much about the logistics of it all, let alone the digital aspects.
Yeah, it's all over the place, like how to secure each and every intake, that becomes really challenging. And with this, it's like one area affected and then you're done.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head. And here's another. In this particular situation, the actor, a criminal actor, was able to compromise GitHub and get access to a full cloud takeover, admin access on AWS for 72 hours. You
Yeah.
know, that's a problem. I know you're passionate about identity, Sangram. What do you think about this
Oh,
one?
so we largely as societies and practitioners have taken AWS as a huge, huge trusted partner, right? Not only AWS, but bunch of the some of those leading cloud providers. And when something like this happens to them, you wonder, what did we do right? Now, not to kind of say anything wrong about our partners out there, without them we don't exist. And something like AWS and GCP and others are literally the national infrastructure for us. But this is something very interesting from the point of view that if somebody gets hold of admin access to AWS, the amount of damage they can do is significant. So this is we talk about nightmares for in our in our jobs we do, but this is beyond the nightmare you can live because you don't control this at all, and you're leaning heavily on the partners. And if this one happens, then you can. It has happened, but this is something we need to. I hope somebody out there working really hard to ensure that this is being not being repeated. But there are things we can control, there are things we cannot in the world of software
It
supply.
really comes out down to software dependencies and open source libraries, and it's how our developers build software. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
Sun
If I
Tzu.
get into reality,
They're
right, Greg, a lot of these open source, they're good intent, but do we as practitioners do enough to maintain and build these open source, right? There are some people who are very passionate about it. They do it. It's almost and kind of they don't make money. They're free and give them time and energy in for making these softwares better. But probably the time has come for us as an industry look at open source and try hardening those for betterment of our organization. So we talk about Linux Foundation doing this fantastic job, but then point is there is one or two things which happens in the industry and makes us to ask the question like how secure is open source and that is I guess we need to do more work to ensuring that open source is secure.
Yeah. What do you got a couple more examples up here relative to Phantom Raven and Glassworm. Where does this stop, right? I mean,
Doesn't stop. It keeps going and going and going. I guess I don't want to probably take the conversation into the world of a Glasswing and other things we're talking about. A Project Glasswing or some companies are getting early access to some crazy
oh, I
tool.
meant Glassworm. I'm sorry. Sorry. The 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 thing I want to hit next is light LLM, right? I mean, our AI foundation gets rocked by another compromise of tokens, right? I mean, we're still dealing, with LLMs, we're still dealing with API keys
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
uh, tokens, and how are we going to get past this, right? And I think this is a really interesting example of a lot of practitioners didn't understand, even if they were impacted by this, but t tens of millions of downloads of this malicious light LLM package. I mean,
yeah.
what should we think about this?
It happened right while we were at RSA, right? So literally on the RSA floor, we are walking around, and this one came through. Some of us were fortunate not to be on that particular version of Light LLM, but few were really struggling to get hold of this one. But it comes back to the basics, which is do we even know what API keys are out there, which is being managed, right? Are we trusting it, plug it in one time and forget about it, or are we looking at long-standing credentials and making sure that that must be reviewed on a periodic manner. So I don't think there is one thing we need to do. There are multiple things, and particularly at this point, we're reacting. But it comes back to the basic question, Greg, you asked is, do how much we trust each
Sure.
other, and how much we are doing to ensure that others trust us. I think this is a hard work. We a lot of hard work ahead of us.
Yeah, I think we're doing a good job of defining the problem. We need to think about some solutions. What, Sahil and Cassie, what are you thinking about relative to the light LM attack and kind of the mitigations and those kinds of things from a compromise and mitigation perspective?
Go ahead, Sigil.
No, you go ahead, Cassie, then I'll
Okay.
add.
Yeah. So on a lot of these things, I think that we have been compartmentalizing CISO versus AppSec versus, supply chain. And this is an example of all of it. I mean, if you are using it to build product, you are now affected from to your customers, and you truly are in the middle of the supply chain. And uh, the interesting piece about this is that it all stemmed from a security vendor's mistake. And so security vendors and those of us in the industry and who are focused on it, you saw it in the slide a few earlier. These are major names and things go wrong. And it doesn't have to be a startup or a little company anymore. Everybody has to look at all these different aspects of it. And you bring up a good point, Sangram, about rotating keys. I mean, how many, if you really at a medium-sized organization, especially a large enterprise, if you really were trying to think about how many keys that you have out there, it's
Oh,
it's confidential information. Do you have any record of it? Are you rotating it? All of this information, it's not, there's not an exact tool, or you end up with 1,000 different tools to be able to manage it. And I think that just overall in general, it's, somewhat of a technology problem where we're not doing the right thing from the beginning in regards to setting up some of these infrastructures. And this is an example of, if they, understood and had done the threat modeling, what happens if my light LLM gets compromised at this point in time after I've delivered it? Am I resilient enough to be able to manage it? I don't
Mhm.
think that people are looking at it that way.
Exactly. So in the rush of building things, people forget the basic things. Oh, I need to do a security assessment, look from do the threat modeling, whether data is secure, or we have the rotation of the keys. So whatever points you have touched, and Sangram, you great points. It's just that with the push, no one is looking at the basics. That's why I always says look at the basics. And Cassie, once time you really mentioned a good say, the strongest, the chain is as strong as the weakest link.
Yeah.
So, and every one of us is just not the security team, the product team, the software, the third party, everyone is in the chain. So where the chain breaks, if you keep on looking at all the parts and everyone doing their own due diligence, that makes the chain to work. But one, as I said, as you rightly said, one weak link breaks the complete chain, and then it's a chaos everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. As I think all of your contributions were outstanding. I think as a trust chain working group, it might be really interesting for us to promote some best practices in this space because clearly we need some community thought around how to do these things. Uh, would would a trust chain working group tabletop exercise
yeah.
or some other activity like that be a worthwhile next step? Because clearly these these dependency attacks aren't going to go away anytime soon. It's
Yeah.
only going to
Yeah.
accelerate.
Something let's think and work on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, well, let's finally change topics. Not that this is a better topic, but talk about dependencies. I think we're all dependent upon Anthropic these days. And, one of the big things that came out last quarter was a breach of one of their latest models. And, you know, I know it was friendly fire and a misconfiguration on their side, but how should we think about our dependencies going forward relative to a compromised model set? What did the adversary learn about how they're they're building, and what do we need to be thinking about?
Well, this is a hard one. I think we all are leaning on the frontier models, right, for many good reasons, and increasingly they are a national strategic asset in some way or form. And when something goes out, we do not know what else got out with this, right? There are IPs. So we, from outside in, we think there's quite a bit of intellectual property and creativity and the depth which is this company have. And if some of that goes out to bad actors, then we have a problem, right? So this is a big one in my view, though we are not really uh, doesn't have a direct impact at this point, but there could be a lingering impact, which probably we don't see at this point.
I think that I would call it friendly, not just friendly fire. This was a friendly explosion. They have really shot themselves in the foot. So, yes, the friendly fire, but that shows how a security centric organization and one very careful, it takes just one mistake to lose critical IP. And we've seen this
Yeah.
for over a decade when it comes to AWS S3 buckets and all sorts of levels. And what I haven't heard too much, I mean, they did put something out, but what changed in their controls to make this not happen again? And is there learnings that they can bring to the community to make it preventable from other cases? So out of all of the, the all of the agents and security things that they have going on, why didn't it catch this? Why did it end up in, open public forums?
Or was it intentional?
Yeah.
Was it? God knows.
Yeah.
But what do you think, or relative to the third-party risk aspects from a questioning perspective, Sahil? I mean, we've got a couple of questions here on the slide. Um, you know, are these where we should be thinking? I think Cassie brought up a couple of good points. Um, you know, focus is important, I think, here because, you know, practitioners could boil the ocean relative to this one.
Yeah. So, as I read few of the questions over here, so I think just like as we have kind of a playbook, generally when something goes wrong, you have a playbook, and you rightly pointed out having that even playbook for this kind of LLMs going breached. So I think since we have developed this LLM, so we have that much of capability to think what could go wrong and build playbooks on that. Because as practitioners, there are so much things happening. People have giving their own, but having even these kind of Anthropic vendors or chat GPTs, they should have their own playbook so that, okay, if anything goes wrong, this is what we should do and how should we notify our customers. Being open and transparent, okay, this is what happened and this is what we have taken the steps so that it's very transparent, and that's build that trust where Sangram rightly said building that trust is missing. So building that is important.
Yeah, I may contradict you a little bit, but I think they put it out pretty much on the public domain. I don't think they, as far as I see, I don't think there is any information hold back, and
Mm.
there is a clear acknowledgement of the fact that we did a mistake, right? Uh, many times, many times that kind of uh, statement doesn't come out. Again, we don't want to talk about some examples on that. But I
Yeah.
think that they did talk about it. But from our point of view, I think, Greg, I'm thinking loud here, right? It's a, you have to contractually indemnify yourself to some degree. I think this is where the contracts come into play between
Yeah. I,
enterprises.
I think I think that's a great recommendation, Sangram. I think one of the things that came to mind, Sahil, when you were responding, was this was before the model was released. What happens when one of these frontier models is compromised that we all depend on currently? And have we lived through that? Are we prepared for that? As third-party risk practitioners, should we be thinking forward on that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think as we are seeing, every day the world is changing. We are now facing some new realities. You know what? We have never seen this. Okay, now with coming when we had cloud, there were cloud breaches. Okay, we know something new coming. LLM breaches. So as now we have learned with the first mistake, we are so much dependent on this. Okay, what can we do when certain things happen so that we are resilient? What can be done, like having contracts, understanding the risk, at least if, okay, if I'm using a particular model, if that is breached, okay, how is that impacting me? It is really impacting me or not? So doing that risk assessment and understanding, okay, how much I'm using it, that's key. Because yes, Anthropic got leaked, for example, or any of the models got leaked, Light, LLM. Was I using it? Was my company using it? No. Am I protecting myself? Yes. Do I have a contractual agreement with them? If not, if it was there, how deep, how detailed it was. So all those things, as rightly said, we haven't even thought of going to this level, and here we stand. So as we go, we learn, and then we course correct. You know what, let's have some more controls in place, have more detailed contracts in place, have more threat modeling, or more, make sure those kind of scenarios don't happen. So I'm more open in learning. Things will happen, and we have to take this and learn and go forward and think worst case scenario, what could happen. That would be my input on this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In
when
the
when I'm working on contracts and thinking about that, one thing is contracts are in one world and reality is in another. And what's happening in a lot of this is that you can have in your contracts audit right incident reports and things like that. But if you don't have the right details about how to respond when an event occurs and that playbook that Sahil was talking about, from the vendor side, the supplier side, but also your own company, it makes a big difference.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, like we had a SOC playbook, or we have our tabletop exercise, or we have all kinds of playbook when malware attacks, what to do. Now, in this case, internal to company, what are you going to do? And the right to go more details, hey, give me the logs or give whatever details, next level details that we want to make sure nothing is impacted or nothing is breached. So all those fine printing will start going more and more. And the legal and the privacy team getting more involved in this rather than more of a security.
And sometimes we don't even have leverage to negotiate some of these contracts. If you look at
That's
our
right.
frontier models, it is pretty much being point to a online contract, and you just essentially sign it, right? I don't think contract is the answer, but there are some way you have to figure out how to minimify. But coming back to the original point Greg we were making is how best are you going to respond? Uh,
Yes.
and I think resiliency stays in the way we respond to some of the threats. Of course, we need to proactively think what can go wrong and try to mitigate that. But then resiliency in terms of incident response will be key in future.
Yeah.
yeah, in the interest of time, Uh, there were a lot of other things that we have in the quarterly roundup deck. Shiny hunters attacking Intune and figuring out, the security layer can be a control plane for compromise. Verizon and O365 outages that we dealt with from a dependency, from an operational resilience perspective. We're not going to have time to talk about those. We can go. This can be clearly 2 hours of discussion. Um, I'd like to land on some takeaways. We've got some recommendations here on this slide, but in your mind's eye, around the horn, what are some of the key takeaways that you're taking from what we saw in Q1, and how should we be thinking forward?
Let me
My,
go back. Maybe, Kash, you can join very quickly. Sorry. First of all, this was fun working with you, Greg. You have definitely put in a lot of work, and all of us are reading through this. I don't think we're really prepared for to deal with software supply chain and the way we should be. The more and more I personally read and see the landscape of attacks going on, I deeply feel that we got to do some things differently in terms of response. And what do I mean by that is, do I even know in a smarter way to find my software supply chain dependency graph? Or is there a smarter way of finding my software supply chain identity graph, right? So I think those are the areas where things will emerge in future. This is, in my view, we glad that we started talking, putting something in public domain, but in future we'll see a lot more to be done in terms of prescription, and even the companies will come out. The newer companies will come out with, as you talked about, is there a simple way to even know what kind of, we talked about human identity, non-human identity, NHI, but it is agentic identity, or maybe there are persistent access which stays between infrastructure, and if one changes, what happens to other? There's a lot to be unpacked, but the more and more we get into this conversation, and in fact, it is our first iteration, Greg, but for last two quarters, we have been talking about this. This becomes really serious. Like so much of unfortunate things are happening to the companies.
Cassie, I'm going to give you the last word. Sahil, what's your recommendation here on the executive takeaways?
I think Sangram summarized it really well. So I don't have any words, but as I say, as we things come, we iterate and iterate. That's what I can say. And we keep on learning and then see how sophisticated the attacks are happening. So I would say be vigilant. Good that we are having this trust chain because people are focusing on different areas, but this is the one area that we should all be focusing on because we are all dependent on each other. So I would say iterate. That would be my take on this.
I love your agile approach. Cassie, I'll leave you the
Yeah.
last word here.
So I think it's a combination of everything that we've talked about, but from a dependency standpoint, if you have not talked and table talked or even walked through, take this deck and say, could this happen to us or to one of our key vendors? And what are we going to do? It doesn't have to be a complicated exercise, but you walk through and you say, what if this got hit? What if this? Are we prepared? Because this is not standard controls that you would have in any organization. This is not on the CIS or COBIT or SOC 2 reports. It's not anywhere. And that's because they are looking for brand new ways to infiltrate our systems, and new mistakes are happening every day. So I really, please take this and walk through it with your teams and think about it, what happens to you or to your vendors and suppliers, and what are you going to do about it?
Unbelievable advice. Thank you all. This has been an outstanding presentation, first iteration of our threat report for Q1 of 2026. Cassie, Sangram, Sahil, grateful for all of your contributions here. Thank you, everyone, and we'll look forward